An idea is just an idea until it changes the way we see the world. That's the definition of innovation. Ideas can be creative, but they don't achieve innovation until they're realized, until they have an effect, until they change the way we see the world. Innovation is the magic of ideas. We don't know who it was that discovered water, but we're pretty sure it wasn't the fish. Like the fish, it is sometimes hard to see the environment and accurately context the ideas that we perceive. The world we live in today, our fishbowl, is more transparent and more interdependent as a result of the communications technologies upon us. Over 7 billion people on the planet and 5.6 billion have mobile phones, with 50% of the 5.6 billion connecting to the internet without a laptop, desktop, or landline, and never will. Some people think this transparency is a bad idea.
Some people think the internet is a bad thing. Somewhere your identity can be stolen, your home invaded, and your savings robbed without anyone setting foot inside your door. It is one of the most dangerous weapons ever created. A way for the unhinged to spread evil free of supervision or censorship. A place for mankind to exercise its darkest desires. An open market where you can purchase anything you want. Orwell was right. The internet has taken us to a place where everything we do is watched, monitored, and processed without us ever realizing. Some people think the internet is a bad thing. What do you think?
Bad thing, right? Or is it?
Some people think the internet is a good thing. The most powerful educational tool the world has ever known. It's preserving our history, making sure that in the future we never forget the past. When disaster struck Asia, the volume of aid donated by ordinary people through websites outweighed that of their own governments. The internet is a place that is free of state regulation, censorship, and control. The only place where freedom of speech truly exists. Orwell was wrong. It is not the state that holds all the power. It is us. Some people think the internet is a good thing. What do you think?
I agree with the latter point of view. India today is the 4th largest internet population in the world. However, penetration of internet is only 8%, while the United States, UK are at 80% and China is already at 40%. But what I see happening here is an acceleration and conversion that will set new definitions for our industry. It's about to happen here because of the mobile phone and the smartphone. It makes India one of the most fascinating places to be in terms of the profession of advertising. There's one thing the financial crisis taught us. It was how interdependent we all are. Our economic welfare is interdependent. The consequences of our own behaviors impact on others besides our immediate selves. Our world is globalized. Marketing integration isn't an option, it's a necessity. The compatibility of information access is now allowing different cultures to engage without losing their individual sense of culture or their own identity. This enables greater comparisons of socioeconomic differences in interactions with ideas, values, brands, or even a nation. How does this impact the magic of ideas? Bill Bernbach said, of all of us who professionally use the mass media are the shapers of society. We can vulgarize that society, we can brutalize it, or we can help lift it into a higher level. All people engage with advances in communication technology. The advertising profession, as a result, has increased value, but also increased responsibility. As we see the analog to digital transformation, we must remember that digital is not a medium. It's not a channel. It's the air we breathe in communicating with each other. So I want to focus today on an even more powerful and persuasive technology in this post-digital world. This technology touches more lives and has more impact on our socioeconomic future than any other technology, bar none. What is this powerful technology? It's our oldest communication technology, language. I can think of no better place than India to examine the impact language has on ideas. India has more than 18 official languages and upwards of 200 dialects. Over the next 10 years, as India will become more internet penetrated, this market will provide an ideal platform to examine communication in a diverse, interconnected marketplace. Advances in neuroscience are enabling us to look at language communications in a new light. We've been moving so fast with technological advances coming so quickly, it's hard to assess the prevailing communications tools as they whiz past us. Recently, I was a delegate on a business mission to India, hosted by U.S. Ambassador to Singapore, David Edelman. We asked India's Secretary of Science and Technology, is language a technology? And Dr. Ramasani said, of course it is. That's why we're supporting a cognition initiative that is based on neurological research at the Department of Science and Technology of India. Our insights about people are limited by our own assumptions about the thought process that somebody has. It comes from a bias of our own language. The first language a person learns hardwires their mind in terms of how they process information, concepts, and emotions. It's critically important to know what language a person first learns between the ages of 0 and 5, and which language they process information in to truly understand each other. I believe we have grossly underestimated the effect language has on human misunderstanding. And you're probably saying, hey, Tim, what do you mean? I know languages are different because they're different than the one I speak. So, what are you talking about? What I'm saying is we've allowed ourselves to mitigate the difference that language makes because we're able to speak multiple languages. We know people that can speak multiple languages. And we can use interpreters, right? So when we get an interpreter and we're in a meeting and we have an interpreter, everything's simpatico, everybody's connecting, right? You know that's not true. What we're finding is that the gap in terms of cognition is greater than we ever imagined, and we're just now discovering this.
This is the truth. If we turn things upside down, we can't be the best country in the world. I'd be lying to you if I said that Argentina has a great future ahead, that we will be a safe country, that our economy will be strong, that our children will be healthy, get an education, and have jobs. Before anything, you must know, our country does not deserve such things. And I'm convinced of this because I know the Argentine people. Corruption and hypocrisy are in our nature. I refuse to believe under any circumstances that we could be a great country in the coming years. Thanks to the people's votes, this country is sinking to new depths. But there are even more surprises to come. Argentina has only one destiny. And whether we like it or not, this is what is real. You should know that I believe exactly the opposite. This is what is real. And whether you like it or not, Argentina has only one destiny. There are even more surprises to come. This country is sinking to new depths, but thanks to the people's votes, we could be a great country in the coming years. I refuse to believe under any circumstances that corruption and hypocrisy are in our nature, and I'm convinced of this because I know the Argentine people. Our country does not deserve such things. Before anything, you must know that our children will be healthy, get an education, and have jobs. That our economy will be strong. That we will be a safe country. Argentina has a great future ahead. I would be lying to you if I said that we can't be the best country in the world if we turn things upside down. This is the truth.
The point I want to make is that we've allowed ourselves to focus more on the electronic technology of communication than the human technology of insight and understanding, and how people think. With all the diversity of digital information, how does your language shape how you think? Well, a New York Times article just recently, this August 2010, not 1010, said that language has a marked impact on our beliefs, values, and ideologies. They said the first step, we can all do better than pretending we think the same. And what I'm saying is we can all do better than to think that language difference is only this much of a difference. Cambridge University research shows that only smart people can read this. I couldn't believe that I could actually understand what I was reading. The phenomenal power of the human mind, according to a research at Cambridge University. Doesn't matter in what order the letters of the word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letter be at the right place. This is because the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the whole world as a whole. Amazing, huh? So what you have is a convergence of different language technologies, different ways of thinking in a more borderless, multicultural space of individuals. Because today, as we talked yesterday, people are the first media. What is culture? Well, culture's a very big term. But I'll tell you that culture eats strategy for lunch. And it's important that we focus on understanding cultures. When I worked at Nissan, Carlos Ghosn, the CEO of Nissan, employed a cultural psychologist to come and teach the French how the Japanese work and the Japanese how the French work. As you know, that's a joint venture between Renault and Nissan, French and Japanese company. And the cultural psychologist said that there's a lot of culture that's obvious that you see above the water. Things like language is different, environment is different, symbols are different. But there's a lot below the ocean that you can't see. Things like religion and history, customs, superstitions, long-held beliefs. And what he did was he just said, I'm going to look at language. And I've used this all over the world, and this is a fun thing for me to show you. What he did was, you're going to see 4 different languages from 4 different cultures. And what he did was he diagrammed the normal rhythm of a conversation between 2 people in each of those languages. It's not a sales pitch. It's not an argument. It's a normal conversation of give and take between 2 people. So language 1, language 2, language 3, and language 4. As you can see, there's very different rhythm And he asked us which languages we thought were which rhythm. And that's when I learned something that I never knew before, and I wished I'd learned it earlier when I came to Japan. What I learned was that in any language, the verb is the most important and powerful word, because the verb gives context, power, and actions to the nouns, adjectives, and participles we use. As I said, language is a technology. And Marshall McLuhan said that once technology is mastered, it becomes invisible to us. If you recall setting up the VHS the first time and knowing where the wires were and how to use both of the clickers, or setting up your tablet or your smartphone. But once you got the hang of it, it's become an invisible technology to you. And what he said was, in Japanese, the verb is always, always at the end of the sentence. Gosh, I wish somebody would have told me that before I went to Japan. I mean, so if I go and I talk to somebody who's speaking English, or I use an interpreter, but the person thinks in Japanese, and I say, hey, how's your business? Is it good or is it down? Did you have a good year? I've asked you 3 questions, and if you're thinking in Japanese, you have to retrofit that first question. So what we do is we do what all of us do with each other, is we nod. That doesn't mean I agree. Or in Japanese we say, hai, hai, hai. And that doesn't mean I agree either. It means I'm following you. Because one of the hardest things to do in multicultural interactions is to say, I don't understand. Because when you say I don't understand, 2 bad things can happen, particularly if you don't get the inflection right. It can say, you're too stupid to explain to me what you're trying to say, and I don't understand you. Or it can say, I'm really too stupid to understand your wisdom, and I'm never going to get it. So we stay in there, and we think we understand, and we think we're connecting. And my point is, if you're talking to somebody who thinks in Japanese, you have to slow it way down. Speak in short sound bites, and don't use fancy colloquialisms. They won't feel as though you're talking down to them. They will love you because they can understand what you're saying. German. In past tense, German has the verb at the end of the sentence. One of the most unkind things you can do with a German colleague is interrupt them before they've completed their thought. They get really pissed off because you didn't let them finish the verb. Okay. He said that in general, English has a rhythm like that. And what you're seeing there isn't an interruption. What you're seeing is the beginning of a dance between 2 people who can complete each other's thoughts, who have an idea that they come together on and discuss. And since the verb tends to float in the middle in English, that rhythm starts to pick up because you're not waiting till the end of the sentence. In Japanese, that time in between is called ma, which means time. In Latin languages, the verb is often at the beginning of the sentence. So Italian, Spanish, French. Well, now I understand why the French and the Germans have, the Germans think the French won't let them finish their sentence, and the French are going, come on, what's taking you so long? Very different ways that people's minds are wired. The language you first learn from 0 to 5 hardwires your mind like an English plug trying to go into a French plug. It doesn't work without an adapter. And that's what the professional advertising insight person is able to accomplish and needs to be better at in the future. What neuroscience is teaching us is that there's, as I mentioned yesterday, the developed world has some maladies that are becoming more and more important with an aging population. Those are dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's disease. So the medical profession in the developed world is aggressively working to try and understand the process of how the mind works and how it transfers thought. And there's different sections for body part related neurons and object-specific neurons. Leg-related words show up in a different pattern than arm-related words. Face-related words affect the mind differently, and it doesn't affect everybody's mind the same, because everybody is an individual. Everybody is an individual in the world where people are the first medium. And we're finding that color versus form words also have a very different effect in terms of how it registers with an individual's brain. What language do you think in? What language do you read? What language do you count in? What we're finding is that an awful lot of people who say that, for example, English is not their first language, but the one they think in today, that if you ask them what they count in, they'll say, my first language, because it was probably the first thing they ever learned, and it was probably taught to them in a rhythm, in a lyrical 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I have 3 tips for improved cultural agility in this new world that we're entering. The first is treat language difference with more reverence. We need to stop assuming that we all think the same or that we should, because we don't. And when using an interpreter, slow way down. Use crisp sound bites. One of the best speakers that I recommend you Google or go to YouTube and listen to is Carlos Ghosn. He's one of the most efficient speakers I've ever heard, because he understands how important it is to get understanding. In Japanese, there's 2 words, 2 ways of saying, do you understand me? This is the one thing I learned in my language instructions while there. The first one is wakaramashishika, which means, do you understand me? Wakaramashishika. And the other one is wakaramas. And I said, what's the difference? And the teacher said, well, wakaramashishika means, do you understand me? And if you don't have the right tonality or inflection, it could sound like the ugly American saying, do you understand me? And I said, boy, I never want to use that. That's not in my character. So I ruled out wakaramashishika, and I only used wakaramas, which means, do you follow me? Do you follow me? Little things like that make a huge difference in achieving understanding between humans. And the third thing, by the way, people don't mind it when you ask them what language they think in. And for the guys in the room, I can tell you that the ladies particularly don't mind being asked what language they think in, and it's a good way to start a conversation. But learn how to say hello, please, thank you, in the language of your communications partner. What we're finding is that people that speak multiple languages have a later onset of dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's disease. The research is still being accumulated, but it's interesting, isn't it? And while we can't all learn everybody's language, we can learn some of the simple things like Dhanyabad, or Shukriya, Namaste, Ohayo gozaimasu, Arigato gozaimasu, Spasiba. One of the things that I wondered during this time was, is there a language, if there's a language, audible language technology, would there be a similar technology with sign language? And what I found is that actually sign language isn't universal. Sign languages differ as much as verbal languages do. And right around the time I was learning that, our DDB Mudra friends produced this. It says, please stand up for the national anthem. Whew. Always took me. I have one last thing to say. In the stream of communications technology that's ever flowing, a current of misunderstanding flows through it. Our profession has a major role in helping people to understand, and we all come to that stream with our own language impediment. Thank you very much. An idea can turn to dust or magic, depending on the talent that rubs against it. Bill Birnbach, thank you very much.
Can we have the mic? Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much. And now I'd like to introduce everyone to our moderator for Tim's session. So allow me to introduce to you Kainaz Gazdar. She's currently the Marketing Director of Procter & Gamble India. Gazdar's immediate assignment before returning to India was Marketing Director. She started her career at P&G India in 1996, and as part of her 16-year tenure with P&G India, she was involved with the launch of feminine hygiene care strategy under brand Whisper, consistently growing P&G's share in rural India and taking a number of P&G brands to a leadership position in the Indian market. Kainaz, thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Tim. Language is a technology and our first technology. That's a pretty mind-opening thought. And before I ask you any questions, I just want to do a quick poll in the audience. Okay, so question for you all here. How many of you fluently speak one language? Just one?
Normal.
The next question is 2 or 3. Okay, so hold your. All of them went down. Okay, 2 languages. fluently speak 2. Okay? 3.
Wow.
Okay? 4. Wow.
Wow.
Cool. So that gives you, say, an average of 2.6. What does that mean with respect to Indians? Are they highly technologically advanced?
I'm still working on this, but I asked my friend Madhukar Kamath and his wife Shalini when we came into town. I said, do you think, and I don't mean this in a negative way at all, do you think that India people as a culture speak faster and think faster than other cultures? Because that's what it seems to me. And they said, yes, we get told we speak too quick. And I think it's because your minds have gotten more used to switching to different languages and different thoughts. It's a higher state of thought conversion than somebody from a soulless language. I can't prove that, but I can tell you if you assume that that's the case, and you assume that India's internet coverage goes from 8% up to 40% in the next 3 years, and you know that what we're learning about young people is that in a given hour, they switch communication modes 27 different times. So the switching mechanism of a young person and the switching mechanism of a mind that's trained to consider alternative thought processes could be a pretty powerful collision. That's the way I look at it.
Okay? Now, given this understanding of languages, and given how the Indian mind operates and how many languages it processes, what would your suggestions be to advertisers, marketers, in terms of coming up with great ideas?
The first
what do they have to do differently?
The first is to really do better than to think we all think the same. I think there's that kind of arrogance leads to rough, thick, not very embraceable ideas. Ones that are sometimes hard and certainly not as tender as the work you saw for Silent National Anthem. So I think being more cognizant of language, and we all know the story about the people that wanted to launch the Nova car in Brazil, right? They went down and they found out that Nova in Portuguese or Brazilian means no go. And a lot of people have heard the story. I say, well, wait a minute, what do you think that meeting was like? Sam, you can see the meeting. There's these guys from Detroit, and they're standing there and they're saying, on January 1, I want you to be ready to launch the Nova. We want to see outdoor billboards from the airport all over the stadiums on January 1st because it's coming. And one little guy in the back of the room who was afraid to say, basically, you don't understand, said, well, Signora, it's Nova. It may not work. It may not work. What do you mean, buddy? It may not work here the same way. It may not mean the same thing. Well, let me tell you, we're going to use that word because it's being printed on every car. On January 1, I want to see the signs up here. Got me? So January 1, outdoor billboards that says, introducing Nova. No go. I think that this sensitivity is the answer to the question that you're asking.
And sensitivity from the point of view of?
Comes what?
Sensitivity from the point of view of different things.
From the point of view that people are the first media,
yeah,
and that people are individuals. Because from everything you've heard and seen in these wonderful presentations, and I'm delighted that I was able to be here to see them, the ideas are best communicated when they're communicated from individuals to individual.
Yes. You took the example of the silent national anthem. It's one of my favorites. I've seen it many times and love it. I have seen it being shared on YouTube, Facebook, super fast. One of my top favorites. Given that it did such a wonderful job of communication without a language, why do we think so much about languages? Is language the key to communication, or is it visuals?
Well, it's a combination of both, but the reason why I'm focused so much on language is that language, what I know about language so far from what the neuroscientists are teaching us, is it hardwires our minds. It alters the way a concept flows through and connects. And I believe the sign language would too, which is certainly a reason why sign languages aren't universal. They suffer from the same structure issues that language does. So I don't know which came first, the word or the visual, you know.
Yeah. Just to push that a little further, going back to my training days when I joined advertising marketing, one of the first things I learned from one of my agencies was when you evaluate communication, just watch the visuals. Don't listen to anything. In the context of that, where does language play a role? Is it really the key thing for communication?
Yeah, I think the other thing that I left out, and I'll see if I can do this because it's always hard to do this from the back. If you grew up reading left to right, left to right, left to right, or you're communicating with somebody visually that learned to read top down, left, top down, left, top down, it would be a very different frame of reference. And as you know, when you see a magazine that's created in Arabic, it's opposite. In Japanese, it's opposite than English. And I'm sure you have magazines in printed material in India that's the reverse. In some languages, this is an it. But in other languages, you have to decide whether it's male or female before cognition is achieved. So I do think visuals are extremely important, and I think that visuals are as extremely important in understanding culture. I mean, we learn every day that, you know, if you do this, it means something terrible to somebody, or if you know, hold your arm in a certain way, or a gesture can be seen as a very foul gesture and maybe very common in your culture. I'm always reminded of the guy that got up and threw the shoes at George Bush. And it was quite a visual.
So equally important, I guess. Okay, one last question before the iPad question comes up. There's been a lot of conversation today on communication.
It's great. India has 18 different languages, and they're going to be more able to more quickly reach understanding with people if they hold reverence for language difference. It's all dependent on how you look at it. And that's why I'm not just saying this because I'm here. Every time I come to India, I learn something more, and this time has been no different.
I have 3 questions here.
Oh, okay.
And I've been given the honor of selecting the iPad winner.
Oh.
So I'm going to go with something that sparks emotion. And the question is, why does language barrier matter when emotion can act as a great unifier for world citizens?
I didn't say that language is the most important thing, but I think we minimize the impact that language has in helping us achieve understanding with people. If we get it wrong up front by introducing no va, a great piece of music and a teary-eyed celebration between a daughter who's given a car and her father has less magic.
So I'd like to invite the winner, Nitin Garg from GPI. Nitin, are you here? Tim, if you could hand over the iPad to him.
Oh boy. Oh, take this. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for your question. Thank you. Should we move on?
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for teaching us about language as a technology and for ensuring that emotions, visuals, and language all are important for us. Thanks a lot.
And thank you, Kainas. We'd like to present both of you with a small token of our appreciation for joining us here this afternoon. Mr. Sam Balsara, if you could join us on stage to do the honors.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sam. It's always nice that you're in the front row for me. Thank you. They want a picture. Sam?